From time to time, topics pop up that we have plans for a full redirect episode, but that our audience also deserves a quicker heads up, so to speak. With that in mind, we're introducing a Cliff's Notes version of these topics to be followed by a redirect episode. We're calling these BTW with BlackTruck Media and Marketing, as in, oh, by the way. We promise to be a brief pit stop in your day, just about 10 minutes, and then we'll be gone so that you can move forward with quick takes and confidence in the digital space. We'll be back later to deliver all the details you crave from our team.
Welcome to BTW with BTM, where we talk about the latest in digital marketing and what's impacting the visibility of your brand online. I'm your host, Jason Dodge, founder and CEO of BlackTruck Media and Marketing. On this episode, we're going to discuss Google's shift away from third-party cookies. Finally, what some might mark as the end of an era in tracking online activities of users and starting the new complex journey, if you will, for those of us in the digital marketing space. So we've got a lot to get through in a short time to do it, so let's get into it. We're going to start off first on this episode talking about this as being Google's initial trial run. So what I mean by that is doing away with third-party cookies in Google's Chrome browser has been something that's been discussed for a long time now, right? And only recently, as of January 4th, has Google started to roll this out, and they've begun the trial of its new, what they're calling tracking protection feature, which signals the end for third-party cookies finally in Chrome. And we're starting to see the first glimpse of a cookieless future to actually happen. And it's going to impact and affect about 1% of Chrome users at this stage. So what does the road to phasing out cookies even look like, right? After many years, many adjustments, Google is moving forward with its plan, but it's not a simple process. It's not a flip the switch and cookies go away. It's under a lot of regulatory scrutiny and the evaluation of Google's alternatives. Their alternatives to cookies are that and the regulatory scrutiny that they're going to go through are really the key steps in this journey. And we'll likely see conversations coming out of Europe drive the outcome of that, because they're probably the biggest driver of a lot of the privacy and security regulations that you see today that impacts big tech. So why is this a big deal? Given Google Chrome's I would say space in the market, right? They're the leading browser with around 65% of market share. The impact could be quite large, but it's also very much unknown at this point too. Chrome accounts for somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.2 billion users. So right now their tests will impact 1% of that, or around 32 million users for those of you doing the math at home. So where we're going is the industry really has to make some changes or be ready for changes. And as the industry does, especially in ad tech, the reaction is always interesting. So let's talk about Google's privacy sandbox. This is their next generation, if you will, in tracking users online. So the ad industry, I would say, is very cautious and wary about Google's privacy sandbox. And there's a consensus on the uncertainties surrounding this type of initiative, especially regarding its impact on smaller publishers and really what's going to become the consolidation of power within large platforms, with the potential for that. So there's certainly a house divided over the privacy sandbox. Some see collaboration as strategic, where others are probably more wary of reinforcing Google's dominance in the advertising space. So it's really a balancing act between innovation and maintaining relevance in the new ad world, if you think about that moving forward. Now, we at BlackTruck, we've definitely covered this topic before a few years ago when we started to cover, like, hey, Google's going to do away with third-party cookies in Chrome, and it was around the onset of iOS 14.5, and so you had Apple getting in a little bit of an argument and this privacy struggle between them and Meta. But when you start to break down the intricacies, I think given Google's privacy sandbox and the different ad cohorts, the audience cohorts that they've already developed, if I were to place a bet, it actually is going to hurt other platforms more than Google's own. So let that sit with you for a minute, right? I really do think that if anything, it could potentially benefit Google in the outcome. But what about alternatives to third-party cookies, right? That's another thing, is everybody's saying, oh my gosh, if they do away with third-party cookies, what do we do? Well, the alternatives to third-party cookies as signals, and it's a transformative shift, right, for advertisers. Yet they also come with their own set of challenges, and there's a lot of unknown. The biggest one being privacy compliance and targeting effectiveness. Those are two items there. So it's a real complex landscape that is still taking shape and will unfold. What does it mean for the future, and talking about future strategies for marketers is that I think that marketers really are going to start or should start exploring various strategies in this post-cookie world, from things such as authenticated IDs, so authenticated user IDs, which starts to dip its toes into first-party data and how you're tying that together, and then contextual tactics or contextual ad targeting tactics. So the goal here is to figure out how to navigate this new landscape effectively while adhering to privacy standards. And I want to make sure that as listeners, as viewers, that you keep that key piece of information kind of in front of you, which is the privacy component. We've gone through that whole, as an SEO, we've gone through, mobile get and all the different changes with algorithms, but really we're in this privacy first mentality, and users are starting to become more and more in tune with where their information is, what information companies have on them, and how it's being used. And that's really a big driver behind this. So for advertisers, adapting to changes like this is kind of like learning a new language, right? The advertisers are going to have to deal with a mix of old strategies, evolving into those privacy laws that are starting to be on the forefront, and new tech complexities. So it's a significant shift in digital advertising for some. I think for some. So as we wrap up here, I always like to say, let's take action. What are the key action steps for advertisers and marketers that either we can do, or that we should be thinking about, right? So there's a lot of things that we can't do anything about, and we just have to deal with that right now. But let's talk about the things that we can do. So first, embracing first-party data. I am not the first person to speak on this, though I've mentioned it a lot over the last couple of years, but collecting and utilizing your customer data is and always has been your currency as a digital marketer. Your currency as a brand. It is your lifeline, if you will, to repeat business. There is a reason that large e-commerce players like Amazon do not give the retailer, the merchant, their digital currency. They're happy to give you the physical address of the person who bought a product from you through Amazon all day long because you need to fulfill that order. But what they don't do is they won't give you that individual's email. They won't give you that digital thumbprint, if you will, right? You have to continuously go through Amazon for that. So embrace first-party data collection. Exploring new technologies, where there, I think, is a mantra of wait and see. It doesn't hurt to start looking at other emerging tech, as well as how you tie your data sources together. That's probably going to start to become more and more important, right? As you open, let's say, your book of business up and see where your leads are coming from, and really what's your pipeline. Prioritize privacy compliance. I mentioned it multiple times through this episode, but really ensuring that your marketing strategies are compliant with privacy regulations based on where you do and intend to do business should be a priority anyways. I am not a legal consultant by any means. And generally, when questions come up about tracking and privacy concerns, when those come up at BlackTruck, our tendency always is, hey, you really want to consult your legal team on that. And there are definitely legal groups out there who are much, much more in tune now than ever before on privacy and compliance. But really, you want to think about, where are we doing business and what are we tracking? What are we tracking on people, right? What do we want to hold, and what do we want to house, and what do we want to hang on to? Certainly, it doesn't go without saying, diversifying your marketing mix. As always, I would say, don't rely solely on a single platform or technique. Diversify the channels and the platforms that you're using could help mitigate the risk associated with one single source. So what I mean by that is that if this ends up benefiting Google, right? Because Chrome is their browser. So if it ends up benefiting Google and the use of contextual targeting inside of Google Display Network, the GDN, versus maybe how you're buying digital ads now through a DSP or through proxy. You might want to reconsider your ad efforts. Keep in mind too, like Meta as a platform, Facebook, the Pixel, that's not a third party data source. That's a first party data source. So you want to keep that in mind, right? Um, the other point is experiment with contextual and cohort based advertising. This stuff is available to you now. Contextual targeting isn't anything new. If you are familiar with the GDN, um, this has actually been something for a while. This is topic-based clusters. And truthfully, cohort-based advertising isn't really new either. It's just with the privacy sandbox, cohort-based advertising has become better, and it's going to become more prevalent as it places people into those buckets versus direct personalized targeting. But I will argue all day long that I truthfully don't think that I need to cookie you to be able to target you effectively. I think that there is enough information out there on individuals that you actually can be targeted in somewhat of a personalized manner, and you probably don't even know it. So more on that in a future episode and probably articles to come. But the other element to think of here as we wrap up is leveraging data partnerships and thinking about a multi-solution approach. So data partnerships, publishers, content creators who have aggregate data will most likely become more popular, right? So publishers and content creators that have that first party data could become more valuable in the future. Preparing for that multi-solution approach, it touched on it a little bit, but think about it, like there's not a one size fits all approach to any of this. So based on the brand, based on the ad strategy, the platform, and who it impacts, right now, the biggest impact is to sites that are potentially served outside of Google's ecosystem that rely on third-party cookie data to understand it. Now, inside the Google ecosystem, the third-party data is going to impact things like retargeting and remarketing and some of the display targeting functions. But Google has done a really good job of, I would say, positioning themselves to, look, just come out on top on this. So it certainly is a great time of change, but also a great opportunity. There's a lot yet to shake out. And really, I would say that all eyes and ears will probably be what happens in EU in the coming months. For now, I think you have time. So that's it for today's episode. It's not all doom and gloom. I think we can go and read a bunch of information and freak out, but really, truthfully, this has been coming. We've all been talking about it. And it's something that we're going to have to get used to. Is it going to impact certain things on a tracking perspective, like all the way down into the nitty-gritty details of like your GA4 reporting? I would say you're already running into troubles with that now. So really what it's going to come down to is just more the personalization and the targeting of those individuals directly online, not necessarily the efficacy per se of your ads. So thanks for listening in to this episode of BTW with BTM. If you found this episode or others valuable, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the show notes at blacktruckmedia.com. And until next time, good luck.